The Atlanta Vigilante War, Case 009, Gardens, Street Life, Dirty Bombs, and Saying Sorry. Script by Joseph and Marisha Cautilli. Based on a short story novella by Joseph Cautilli, Marisha Cautilli, and Peter Kim. Director and producer, Roma Gray. Executive producer credits, Marisha and Joseph Cautilli. Narrated by Joshua Banks and Shauna Lee Carton. David Trimmer has that vision again. The one where he rides a majestic steed into a vat of liquid gold. It's a vision he has clung to ever since it first appeared. The gold consumes him, burning away his folly, like the ancient Zoroastrian belief of apocalyptic purification. He believes it's both a warning and a promise. The mushrooms told him, and they never lied. In this vision, he achieves peace. He knows he'll get his gold someday. He wakes in the subway tunnel, groggy and exhausted. His body feels heavy, weighed down by the remnants of the dream. The graffiti-covered walls pulse with neon colors, creating a surreal, otherworldly backdrop. David's eyes are wide, haunted by the images that still linger in his mind. His hands tremble slightly as he pushes himself up, the cold, rough concrete biting into his skin. Self-doubt gnaws at him. He wonders if the vision is just a cruel trick of his mind. His brow furrows, and he bites his lip. The lines of uncertainty etch deeply into his face. As he stands, his legs feel shaky, as if they might give out at any moment. His heart races. The echoes of his dream, mingling with the rhythmic hum of the city above. He feels caught between two worlds, questioning which one he truly belongs to. The line between dream and reality blurs, leaving him lost in the brain-impaired existence that is his life. Jonesing for his next fix, a sweating David Trimmer crawls out of the subway track and up to several passengers on the train. His stomach churns with hunger and desperation. From a distance, he hears them listening to A-Team by Ed Sheeran. "Help me. Please help me." He holds out his hand, promising anything he can think of for an airdrop of a couple of digital dollars. When two passengers scurry quickly away from him, it's the first time he realizes his pants are soaked. Maybe this is a sign that liquid gold is coming soon. He tightens his black studded leather jacket, trying to hide his shame. His eyes dart around, haunted and desperate, as he jostles through the underground spaces connecting the subway system to the many downtown mega scrapers. The underground is an excellent place to escape the oppressive Atlanta heat. In the last few years, Atlanta has experienced almost half its days above 90 degrees. David steps on an escalator going up, sharply contrasting with his life, which he feels is always going down. Since 18, David suffers from severe mental illness. Stem cell treatments for schizophrenia have failed to make it manageable. Instead, he progressed to implants, a tiny gold patch next to his left eye. The device weaves into his brain, combined with occasional stem cells and behavioral treatments. It helps him function. Still, issues remain with interacting, pushing him to seek drugs to relieve his mind of its problems. In some ways, getting the drugs makes him more social than he believes he would be without them. But even he has to admit he has lost control at some point. Maybe it was when the H-squid appeared on the streets. His hands tremble as he grips the escalator railing, his breath coming in shallow gasps, his eyes bloodshot and filled with a mix of hope and despair, scanning the surroundings for any sign of a dealer. The neon lights cast a sickly glow on his gaunt face, highlighting the lines of worry and exhaustion etched into his skin. Each step feels like an eternity, his chaotic thoughts blending with the city's heartbeat. David's reflection in the escalator's polished metal surfaces stares back at him with a hollow gaze, a stark reminder of the man he has become. The pain in his stomach intensifies, a brutal reminder of his reality. He clenches his jaw, determined to make it through another day, another moment in this empty existence. The world outside moves on, indifferent to his suffering, as he rides the escalator towards an uncertain future. It's been a tough 6 months. First, David's H-squid supply ran dry. Word on the street is that the crook was killed, taking the recipe to the grave. Over the 6 months, he tried different forms of heroin, but the high isn't the same. They always leave him longing for the original juice, and don't stop the withdrawal creeping in. His blood pressure spiked about 4 days after his last H-squid dose. On the streets, he stole large doses of potassium supplements from pharmacies and health centers to keep his blood pressure low. This was risky, with potential consequences of the supplement on his kidney, as well as legal possible issues, and he's almost caught. When a bullet from a security guard whizzed past him, he knew he needed an alternative. David tried rehabs, more to get medicine to lessen the physical pain of withdrawal than to make any claims of sobriety. Hell, fake it till you make it, he guesses, or at least that's a twist on the platitudes of wisdom that the counselors say. In rehab, they kept his pressure under control. Sensors in his room monitored all his vitals. His heart arrhythmia worsened over the first few days in rehabilitation, 3 weeks from his last dose. The words prolonged QT intervals were frequently battered about him. The doctors worried he might stroke out. Until a week ago, he wore stretchable skin to monitor his pressure and heartbeat. While in rehab, he works in multiple therapies. In his behavioral therapy, using the community reinforcement approach, he conducted a functional analysis of his drug use, improved communication skills, and planned ways to avoid relapse. None of this at the time he planned to use. After a brief round of brain stimulation, his medical doctor placed him on magic mushrooms, as psychedelics were often used for treating symptoms of depression and, lately, some forms of addiction. Hell, it's all medicine had to offer most of the time. It was, and is, just ride it out. The last he failed at. At this point, his for-profit health insurance ran out. In his sessions, he still dealt with the pain, suffering, neglect of his life, and the death of his wife, but his therapy has reached an end. Many things can set the stage and send one down the path to addiction: genes, stubbornness, defiance, and trauma, to name a few. For David, part of it is not a trauma to himself, but one he inflicted on others. On the night of his discharge, he saw the devil posing as an angel of mercy. The dimly lit hallways of the rehab facility purr with the mechanical whir of medical drones, their cold, artificial eyes monitoring every move. Now, the faint neon glow from outside casts eerie shadows on the walls. David's heart races as he steps into the night, the weight of his past clinging to him like a shroud. His fingers twitch involuntarily, the lingering effects of the brain-stabilizing implants coursing through his veins. He feels the emptiness gnawing at his soul, a hollow echo of the life he once knew. The rain falls, diluting the sweat on his brow, a bitter baptism in the lonely urban jungle. So many people, and yet so alone. Despair coils around him like a viper, tightening with each breath. He glances up at the flickering holographic advertisements that line the streets, their promises of salvation and escape mocking his reality. The faces of strangers blur into a sea of indifference, each one a ghost of his own lost hope. His breath comes in ragged gasps as he clutches his jacket tighter, the chill of the night seeping into his bones. Desperation claws at him, threatening to pull him under, but he fights to keep his head above the rising tide. The path before him is shrouded in uncertainty, a labyrinth of choices that seem destined to lead him back to the darkness he seeks to escape. His eyes, bloodshot and weary, scan the horizon for any sign of solace, but find none. He cries in despair, "God, no, help me. Can't think. Need to think." The world around him pulses with a life of its own. The fusion of machine and bustling flesh on the streets creates a cacophony of sound and light that shrouds him and only serves to heighten his sense of isolation. They are here, but he cannot join them. Rejected for his past and illness, he is a relic in a city of progress, a man out of time and out of place, searching for a redemption that may never come. His steps falter, the burden of his despair threatening to crush him, but he trudges on, a ghost in the neon haze. The day before, David wanders from his room just a few hours before discharge and strolls into the bowels of hell. In hell rests a backpack. At first, his eyes fall on it, shocked. There are two separate bags, and the trappings of wires and gears lay in them. Pieces spin and whir, 12 inches in diameter and 18 inches long. They were undoubtedly amazing to see. It might be an H912 transport container for MK54 SADM, where the weapon lies. It's long and round. He tries to lift the bag. It weighs about 30 kilograms. When he was a child, his father told him of such a weapon, which the Russians had tried to smuggle into Ukraine during the war a few years before that. His father was in the business, as they would say. But this is not a real MK54. He can tell, as it lacks sophisticated weaponry. He wonders if it's emitting radiation now. Such things are often poorly designed, and leakage of material is common. A noise from outside the room tells him the devil is about to enter. He quickly ducks into a supply closet and hides. His hands tremble. If caught, they would punish him and could toss him from the program. An orderly, Bob Robinson, and a janitor, whose name David doesn't know, enter the room. They inspect the bombs. David peers from inside the closet, his eyes wide with fear and anticipation. Sweat beads on his forehead, and he bites his lip to keep him from making a sound. Not knowing David is there, they confirm they are dirty bombs, and speak freely of using the device to push the country into civil war. Special atomic demolition munitions, SADMs, will help us retake our country. Let the government battle the dealers and the vigilantes. We just have to ride it out. The other man nods in agreement. SADMs? David remembers his father using the term. A chill races up and down his spine. This is much worse than he could have imagined. What's the target? No police special. Some dilapidated homes in the Lakewood Heights community. They would make it appear like it was designed to take out both the dealers and the resident addicts. Of course, it would take out many law-abiding citizens, but that did not matter to the men. The next day, he is released from the hospital. He strides out of the hospital, the neon glow of the city's skyline reflecting off his cybernetic implants. His attempts to communicate with his friends only end in frustration, his words coming out in a garbled mess like before his implants. They scoff at him, declaring he's lost what remained of his sanity. The malfunctioning implant is to blame. The arguments with his friends leave him unsettled, and despite his relapse prevention plan, the cravings return with a vengeance. He succumbs once again to his heroin addiction. This latest batch is potent, but it's still a far cry from the legendary H-squid. At the end of the station, his eyes lock on an older woman. She seems familiar, and he's overwhelmed with a sense of her kindness. Is it real? Perhaps it's the worn Birkenstock shoes that suggest she might be sympathetic to his plight. My guardian angel. He feels a glimmer of hope. Or maybe his mind is fraying, and he desperately needs anything to anchor himself. He shouts out awkwardly, voice echoing off the grimy walls. The high-speed train roars by, and in a blink, she's gone. The station's cold emptiness rushes back in. He wonders if he'll ever see her again, or if she is just a fleeting figment in his unraveling world. It's been 8 hours since Jane Uprose discovers someone at a local bar shooting in Atlanta wants to blow the lid on the origins of the Vigilante War. She initially scoffs at the media-driven moral panic, rolling her eyes. 6 hours after the woman gives her the information, she's gunned down right next to Jane. Jane's heart races, her hands trembling. 4 hours since her captain informs her about the department on 6 Mile Island, leaving the case to the Atlanta Police Department. She clenches her fists, jaw tightening with frustration. 3 hours and 45 minutes since Bare Naked Ladies, 1 week, convinces her she can't let the situation go. A determined glint in her eyes. 3 hours since she takes a 2-week leave, pacing back and forth. An hour and a half since she explained the story to her wife, her voice shaking with urgency. An hour and 20 minutes pass since she launches into a heartfelt 15-minute apology for who she is, tears welling in her eyes, shadows casting deep lines across her face. An hour later, she holsters her bio-coated gun with a resigned sigh, her jaw set in determination, and heads for the city. 10 minutes later, she leaps onto the Metro maglev tube to downtown Atlanta, her heart pounding with fear and resolve. The subterranean area of Atlanta is hidden gem, its gleaming shopping centers and deep blue swimming pools starkly contrasting the city's gritty underbelly. But the real marvel is the greenest data information center in the world. Its glass ceiling, nurturing shrubs and trees underground like a clandestine Eden. The space feels almost surreal, a deceptive sanctuary in the city's dark heart, offering her a fleeting moment of peace.
It's nicer than I remember.
That moment soon dissolves as she stumbles through the throng of people, the dark figures pressing in around her. The maglev draws into the station, its metallic hum a reminder of the cold, hard reality she faces. Her resolve hardens with each step, a lone warrior against the encroaching night. Jane feels laggy as the day's weight falls squarely on her. Neon signs flickering through the train window casting eerie glows. A nanosecond of worry creeps in about her marriage. She acknowledges it, but does not hold it. It passes. The chaos of the case and the lack of sleep have thrown her circadian rhythm into a tailspin. She does a quick 2-step dance on the maglev train to jolt her mind awake. Slumping onto a seat, she draws out a plush blanket her wife packed. The poor thread count is irrelevant. She's grateful it's there. Exhausted, she dozes off for a brief nap. Less than 20 minutes, failing to find true rest. The brief respite leaves her feeling even more drained. A cruel trick of fatigue. She wonders if she can convince the Atlanta Metro officers to share information about the club that night. But deep down, a part of her would be just as content with a cup of ginseng tea as the city's underbelly pulses with electronic and biological rhythms around her. She mumbles to herself.
Anything worth doing is worth doing to excess, I suppose.
Jane stands in awe before the towering 20-story glass and concrete Atlanta police station, hoping to find the police report and file on who was in the club that night. The building is connected to the buildings next to it on its 8th and 10th floors by green glass enclosed sky bridges. These bridges form an odd, futuristic oval, transforming the architecture into a high-tech marvel. 3 small-sized eVTOLs, experimental flying electric vehicles, circle the buildings. Their red and white frames combining the agility of a helicopter with the size of a car zip through the air. They deliver materials swiftly across the city, like hearts from accident sites to local hospitals for transplants. The entire scene, with its blend of cutting-edge technology, including AI and urban grit, fills Jane with wonder and determination. The city has become an incredible testament to the power of society and a testament to the capability of science and engineering, all the while being flawed with the excesses of inequity. Strolling into the building, officers and arrested people jostle her. Still in a half-asleep fog, she bounces out of their way. It is like some voodoo priest has turned her into a mental zombie. She heard rumors of such things in the islands, but wonders why they need a voodoo priest when lack of sleep produces the same effect. "Excuse me," an officer says as he bumps into her, while pushing a homeless addict to be processed.
It's okay. Sorry to be in the way.
Jane pauses a moment to see if the officer would ask who she is. He does not, but pushes the prisoner along.
Who can I?
She tries to get attention from the officer, but he just points to the reception desk. She nods and marches forward. The dirty, gray reception area reeks of stale beer and urine, the stench clinging to the air like a bad memory. A faint smell of coffee perks up her eyelid, a cruel reminder of the comfort she craves. She waits in front of the desk, her eyes scanning the room with a mix of weariness and determination. Behind it, several officers answer phones and talk over each other, their voices blending into a chaotic symphony. She notes the blue uniforms designed to protect against bullets and dirty bomb radiation worn by every officer. These shirts, an expensive gift from the city's corporate council, are from a top fashion company in Milan. The police now look more like a special forces assault team than old community beat cops. The nature of community policing and attacks against officers and civilians have evolved over the years, especially since Cop City was built. Now civilians are divided. Some yearn for the old days of walking the beat, while others push for even more military hardware for the officers. The class of ideologies mirrors the technocratic cityscape around her. Jane's heart pounds in her chest, her breath shallow, as she steels herself for the battle ahead. The weight of the corrupt streets and the darkness of her past press down on her, but she refuses to back down. These events were so long ago that she feels sure things have improved. Besides, the stakes are too high, and the truth must be uncovered, no matter the cost. On the side, Jane catches a sight of the new multi-purpose room Atlanta's Police Zone 5 got the year prior. The room is filled with information kiosks, holo projectors displaying perpetrators, and touch glass consoles accessing past officer recordings to bring them live and tell the story of particular cases. To serve the public better and protect the innocent from crime, they claim. It all feels too antiseptic for Jane, especially the machine learning system analyzing suspects for crime patterns. Before she can get a word in, the sergeant at the desk asks her to take a number and have a seat. He points to an old wooden brown bench. His expression, bored. She tries to interject, but the officer rolls his eyes, sighing exasperatedly. A need to apologize swells within her, but she suppresses the urge, her fingers twitching in frustration. The blue neon lights outside cast long shadows, adding to the tension in the air. The place feels both sterile and suffocating, a digital fortress in the heart of a decaying city. Atlanta always felt odd to Jane. Part of it seems to be in perpetual decay, while other parts seem to be entering a golden age. She sighs.
I'll wait.
Jane hustles to her seat. The sergeant collapses in a black swivel chair behind the desk. The number call goes on for about 15 minutes before a young man emerges from the conference room. His posture is perfect, his smile comforting, and his step confident. He projects the height of honesty, integrity, and care. Jane, the surprise in his voice hangs in the air. Jane uprose.
John Bright.
She calls. His broad smile recharges her. It has been 5 years since she has seen him. Back then, he was clean-cut with a boyish face. Now, the same clean-cut face is etched with a few lines. Figures in her head.
Battle scars. From worrying and working the streets.
When they meet, there was something endearingly shy about him. Something about his shyness triggered her irreverent side. It took her a while to break him out of it. He was a city detective who came to 6 Mile Island to retrieve a perp who escaped post-trial. Together, the two spent nearly 4 weeks hunting the man down.
How the hell are you?
Great, Jane. It's been 5 bloody years. How's the wife?
That long. She's great. You know I'd be no place without her. You made captain. When the hell did that happen?
A few months ago. His chest heaves with pride. So, what brings you from SMI? She chuckles.
Case questions, really. I was waiting here to be seen.
Waiting? Sergeant, what the hell, man? You are leaving one of the finest detectives in the state sitting here?
Oh, stop.
Jane blushes. Her hand rises to cover her mouth. I had no idea she was a cop. Lady never mentioned it.
That's true, John. I never spoke. Sorry. It was all my fault.
Well, come back and let's talk. She giggles at the sweetness in his manner and then scolds herself mentally for such a childish thing. For all his troubles, David can't find the angel. It's a sad deal, for he knows deep inside, somehow, she's important like. A divine sign he's desperately seeking. How she's necessary eludes him, but he feels she's a guardian, a beacon of hope in his murky existence. His brain feels cloudy, still from the mushrooms combined with the heroin he bought off the street last night. The two leave him feeling okay, but he knows it's only time before his facade of wellness fades, and the cravings land on him again. Even now, he licks his lips in trepidation, part worry, part anticipation, part excitement of the pain, and his drive to make another score. He whispers a prayer, hoping for deliverance, seeking strength to resist the darkness. The angel's image symbolizes his redemption, maybe even the world, a glimmer of faith in a place that feels increasingly lost. He clings to that hope, praying for a miracle to guide him out of his mental abyss. His mind drifts, and he wants to be gone. David wants his life to be over, if he cannot be with the angel. He feels that if he were lucky, the next life would be more merciful than this one. This is temporary, by 7 seconds play from a shop he passes. The music gives him strength. Shuffling down the crowded street, his boots crunch over discarded cardboard coffee cups and ripped plastic bags. He tries to read the patterns in the chaos. The city transforms around him into a section adorned with white marble fountains and columned buildings. Brief memories flash through his mind, bringing a chill. The man with the tattoos? not like his own, which are tastefully done. No, these are grotesque monsters of the deep, leading to the sneering mouth of an evil man, Bob Robinson. His jaw tightens in defiance. Atlanta, these streets, can try to break him, but he won't go down without a fight. He has a mission to stop the golden light from consuming all. He will not let himself have the luxury of failure. The defiant spirit courses through his veins, a constant reminder to resist, to rebel, to stand tall, even when the odds are stacked against him. As the weight of his memories presses down, he squares his shoulders, determined to face whatever comes next with unyielding resolve. This person hides behind fake good deeds, but is the devil at heart. David casts his eyes downward at his hands. They're tan and rough. Hopelessness sets in, spiraling him into worry and a desire to end it all. The sun's warmth beats down on him, making him glance up to curse it. At that moment, it must be the angels in heaven, for he sees her. She's exiting the police station. A man is at her side, and they're both laughing. His heart skips a beat. He rushes toward her, the world around him blurring into a dreamlike haze. Salvation might yet be brought to his world, a flicker of hope igniting within his soul. The neon lights flicker, casting ethereal glows as he moves, every step filled with both dread and anticipation. The surge of music-inspired defiance courses through him. If the world wants to grind him down, he'll fight back with every breath left in him. His jaw tightens and a fierce determination shines in his eyes. No more running. No more hiding. He'll face his demons head-on, with the raw energy and rebellious spirit of the streets pulsing through his veins. This time, he won't let fate dictate his path. He'll carve out his own destiny, one step at a time. Staggering toward her, he calls out, despite knowing he was not good at communicating. This would be work. For him, a type of work he would prefer to avoid. She glances at him. Her face holds no signs of recognition. He stretches out his hand, and she draws back. The man next to her steps between them. The streets of Atlanta are always a bit too dirty for Jane's liking. She's been to the city before, but never enjoyed spending time there. Her mind rolls over the events of leaving her wife that morning, the heavy goodbye lingering in her thoughts. She had intended to call her upon arrival, but the chance never came. She'd need to make time when they got to their destination. Now, as she strolls away from the police building with John under some industrial scaffolding, a homeless man approaches her. The scaffolding's shadow stretches long over the cracked sidewalk, even during daytime. Neon lights flickering overhead, casting eerie glows. From a distance, she can tell he's broken inside. It's not a difficult feat. The man's clothes hang loosely, stained and tattered. His eyes are a dark abyss of desperation, glowing faintly from the cheap, outdated implants that attempt to enhance his vision. Jane's hand instinctively hovers near her holstered bio-coated gun, the smooth metal reassuring under her fingertips. The city's grime, coupled with holographic advertisements flashing around them, creates a surreal backdrop, heightening the tension in the air. She squares her shoulders, the weight of her responsibilities pressing down. The city's fusion of contrasts, like yin and yang, stands out. Nature and technology, hope and despair, all pulse around her, reminding her of the delicate balance she must maintain. As they draw near, the gritty reality of their existence becomes painfully clear, each step echoing the unspoken struggles of a world teetering on the edge between chaos and rebirth. Jane thinks,
maybe it has always been that way. Since the beginning of time. The struggle between order and chaos, between progress and regression, life and death. When do I accept? And when do I push?
Her relationship with her wife, Karen, comes to mind. She ponders.
We're so different, yet so compatible. Can she accept that this is my job? I need to find who started this damn vigilante war. But poor Karen. Every day I wake up and go to work while she obsesses over me being harmed. And I have the nerve to leave for the city.
Abruptly, her attention shifts as a homeless man approaches her. Officer Uprose, sent from God, my angel. I have the information. Tell you. Approaching homeless people in Atlanta is nothing new for Jane. Bums often harass people for cash, but two things are different in this situation. First, he's not asking her for money, but saying he has something he needs to tell her. Second, he uses her name. In a city that just crossed 1 million people and one she rarely visits, someone knowing her name feels almost infinitely improbable. Yet, here he is, babbling that Jane is his angel. Quickly, John steps between them, his stance protective. The overwhelming smell from the man hits Jane, but his words pique her interest. His exposed skin is peppered with tattoos, skin grafts, and some sort of implants. Evidence of a desperate attempt to enhance his failing body. Jane hopes their actions do not make the man feel demeaned or disrespected, but this situation is odd, and he smells terrible. The odor is pungent and overwhelming. Jane's blue eyes narrow, her mind racing. She leans in slightly, her body tense with caution and curiosity, ready to uncover what secret this man holds. As she is new to this city, Atlanta's gritty backdrop adds to the tension. Every shadow and flicker of movement reminds her of the dangerous game they're about to play. Is the man harmless, or something more sinister? Snap decisions by cops need to be made on the street. Jane feels the weight of the job pressing down on her. It is how she exists. Luckily, John is here. He lives in this place and thus has a better sense of the moment. The relentless homeless man's stench mixes with the city's noise. It's enough to give her a headache. She takes one step back in hopes of finding fresher air. She squares her shoulders. It gives her a better view of the man. Her fingers brush against the cold metal of her bio-coated gun as she prepares to dive deeper into the mystery that has found her.
Do I know you?
She finally asks. The man's thinning, unkempt dark hair drips with oil. You know my soul. You saved it. David's teeth are caked in brown tartar, his gums receding far beyond his years. Come on, Jane. Probably heard your name at the station hour from me as we walked. Jane gazes into the bum's sunken eyes. Ghost-like, his overly pale flesh hangs off.
No. It might be my sleep deprivation talking, but I don't think so.
She glanced back at the man.
Do you know me?
Her voice is warm, encouraging, and empathetic. David appears confused. No, social Darwinism. Guessed. I was on top once. The visit. Jane ponders the word salad, trying to make sense.
Visit? Were you at 6 Mile?
Yes, am I. Yes, am I. His upper lip thins. Dirt smudges his face. He appears startled and even more confused. She notices him scratch his head and sees the small microbionic implants in his brain. They are often used to stimulate portions of the brain in people with schizophrenia, and slow release of stem cells is needed to repair dying brain areas. I remember the smell of your skin. God, sick perv. John jeers in disgust, is evident in his words.
You remember my perfume?
Yes, you pinned me, send me, to end me. Clang associations are common for those with schizophrenia. Thus, while hard to follow, the words do not disturb Jane. Something in his aqua-green eyes is too tricky for Jane to read. She decides to hit the word mentioned first pinned.
Did I arrest you?
Yes, rest. I needed rest. It didn't make much sense to her. Why would she arrest this homeless street man in SMI? She is a homicide officer. Did he kill someone? If so, how is he out of prison? His eyes drift from her to a small leather shop window. Its sign flashes razors and old-fashioned pink neon. She remembers another store here a few years back when she visited. By her calculations, 4 shops have failed in this spot over the last decade. Of course, she only knows of the shops in this location during her visits, so it could have been more.
Who are you?
David. Star of light? In the center of the plate glass window rests a chrome star, reflecting the street's multi-hued neon lights.
You like the reflecting chrome?
Liquid gold. It'll purify us.
Purify?
Yes, in buffeting winds.
Well, thank you. But I must go now. I need to find a woman, and John is here to help me.
Chrome dome all will burn. She thanks the man and twists away. He grabs her arm and spins her back, drawing his magnetic acoustic device. John fires it. The sound bursts, making David scream in pain, and he falls to his knees. John leaps on him. He forces the bum face first to the ground. Jane steps back. Jane thinks.
Well, it is good he used a non-lethal weapon.
Oh, damn, he shit himself. I got diarrhea, please. David screams while pinned to the ground. Grabbing her arm reminds Jane of a teen from 15 years ago. Could this be that teen? It can't be. She remembered a teen full of defiance and guilt. He had been on vacation and thought he could get away with beating up the hotel clerk. He believed the clerk lied about whether room service could come to their hotel room. The clerk almost died, but the kid ran toward his car and started driving. It was a reckless move. He hit an old woman. The woman did live, but her recovery took a long time. She spent it confined to a wheelchair for 3 years. The attempted homicide brought Jane's involvement. She showed him some empathy and got him to confess. The kid was overridden with guilt, and the confession offered him the possibility of starting to make things right. Now, Jane thinks.
Son of a bitch. That kid was the worst.
On the ground, he turns his head again. The pressed and twisted jaw makes it difficult to decide if this was the kid. She tried to like the face to the name David. The resemblance is there. They both possess an overly narrow jaw. Jane stares a nanosecond longer, sweat beads on the man's face. She scoffs the thought away. She followed the boy through his family for 2 years, right? That boy got a doctorate in urban planning, if her memory serves. He was studying exurban sprawl and community cultivation by lowering fees for public transportation. For all of his craziness, he wanted to be someone, or at least that was her memory. But that memory feels hazy now, like smoke slipping through her fingers. Her brain insists on showing her the image of a reckless brat behind the wheel, while the logical part tries to reconcile it with the vision of a learned, responsible adult. The two identities clash, distorting her perception further. Jane shakes her head, trying to clear the fog. Her fingers twitch slightly, an unconscious reaction to the rising tension. She looks at the man again, his jawline sharp and all too familiar. Jane asks herself,
Could it be him?
The noise of the bustling city around her fades into the background as she struggles to piece together the fragmented memories, each one more distorted than the last. A passerby shouts for John to let the man go. John flashes his badge to the woman, who stares blankly at the scene, raising her watch camera to record. Placing a finger on her cheek, Jane ponders.
What was his name again? David something. Or maybe it was Carl. No, David. And David felt about right. David Tremor. Are you David Tremor?
Her voice is steady despite the rising tension. People gather their video cameras, ready to capture the drama. Such action is a ritual in large cities now. David's face brightens. It is clear that he feels good to be seen and known. From the ground, he yells out, "I am David Trimmer."
You look horrible. What happened?
She nods to John, and against his better judgment, he lets David up. Drugs, biology, I'm afraid. Had a pumpkin, but couldn't keep her. Jane suppresses a chuckle. She remembers the old nursery rhyme the kid has gotten wrong.
I think it is a wife.
Part of her hopes is that it will not be her fate with Karen. Why the hell did she pursue this case to Atlanta? Dead.
Your wife is dead.
David's wife is dead. It made him think of that old song composed by Gus Edwards, "For she died by the light of a silvery moon." Not the sun, but the moon. Jane's eyebrow raises in confusion. What has become of this kid? He was bright and so full of life. Sure, he was stuck up and conceited, but that was most teens. Loose association of thought is common with schizophrenics. Jane nods. It's not going to be easy to understand him. Jane's jaw clenches as she battles a rising wave of frustration. Maybe the information isn't even worth her time. Her eyes narrow, contemplating whether it'd be better to turn this one over to the Department of Behavioral Health. A schizophrenic offering apocalyptic information? Sounds typical, even if tragic. She glances at his arms, noticing the track marks lining the inside of his skin near the elbow. The sight tightens the knot in her stomach. Coupled with the fact she has calls to make in an apartment of one Margaret LeBeau to visit, the urge to back off this one surges. Her fingers twitch, and a sigh escapes her lips. Masked by the city's constant hum, a moment of solar bus crossing the street, its honk and screech brings a temporary distraction. It's probably just a bunch of hoopla about his neighbor's dog, clouded in the brain fog of a dual-diagnosed addict with schizophrenia. The neon lights outside flicker, casting long shadows across her face and highlighting the furrow in her brow. She straightens her shoulders, trying to shake off the lingering doubt. Her face hardens with determination, a steely resolve taking over. Jane has her own mission. It is why she came to town in the first place. She decides to move on. It is time to pass on this distraction, as the weight of the city's shadows and grime pressing down on her makes each step feel heavy and deliberate.
Can we get you to the hospital?
The man shudders from elation, or so she thought until he speaks, and she realizes it is only frustration. "No, you can't take me there. You can't be working for them."
I am working for know them. Hey, sweetie, you know I work for SMI police.
He's just trying to avoid returning to whatever shelter he's from. John shakes his head. The man spins and darts back toward the alley. Jane is afraid to lose him, but John seems convinced it is best to let him go. An idea came to her. She hates it, but she has nothing else. She shouts,
David, sir, your wife would want you to stay with us.
Jane hates lying, but maybe there is some esoteric truth in her lies. She shakes her head. Hell, she did not even know his wife. David stops and shouts something in broken Creole. He seems to be calling out to the universe or his wife. Jane calls again. This time, it is.
She has forgiven you now.
She knows it's a long shot to bank on complicated grief. She figures anyone who is distressed harbors some guilt. He cringes in terror. Blind with fear, he stops and mumbles some words. To driver's license by Olivia Rodrigo. She approaches him slowly.
It's okay.
Jane's voice is gentle as she reaches out to him.
We can take you to see the doctors if you want.
Fear bubbles in the man's eyes, his body trembling. I need to tell you about the gold. The doctors in the garden. And the gold. Jane nods, trying to encourage him, her eyes full of empathy.
What about the doctors and the gold?
Jane asks, more to get him speaking and calm him down than with any expectation he could offer intelligible information. The man's words spill out in a cascade of confusion, a jumble of thoughts that make little sense. Her heart weeps for him, his desperation and brokenness so apparent. She takes a deep breath, fighting back her frustration and sadness, her face softening as she listens. Each garbled phrase only reinforces the depth of his torment, making her more determined to help, even if it means unraveling this cryptic message bit by bit. That's right. One of them is calling for the gold. He wants the gold to come and purify us.
Really?
Yes, Angel. Please be careful.
I will.
The kid's face clearly shows he cares about her. Jane responds, not having the slightest clue of what he meant. It's in the room.
Which room?
Hospital room 95, the plant room. David belts the staple singer's chorus of I'll take you there. Jane looks at him oddly. Sorry, forced. Jane jumps on this mention of the hospital to get this patient there.
Okay. Let's all go and check it out.
David seems more relaxed in the conversation at this point. Can I stay away?
No. We need you there. You are the only person who knows where the gold is, and we need you to take us there.
David smiles and nods. Yes, I must prevent it from exploding. Exploding? Like a bomb? Like is? David shouts, hoping he clarified his intent. He still feels like he is talking from behind a large screen, which blocks most of his words from getting out. His mind jumbles, but he manages to force pieces of this think out.
Is someone going to blow up the hospital?
No. Golden light on City Street. Spreads like a wave. Do the wave. It's just word salad.
Let's check it out. Can you drive us to the hospital? And then we can follow up with the other woman at her apartment.
Not until he changes his pants. He'll make my car smell for weeks.
I agree.
The officers drag the addict along, his legs barely moving in step with him. At one point, David trips over himself. Jane and John push him back up, their grips firm yet cautious. As they proceed to carry him along, Jane ponders his words. One of the doctors calling for the gold. His speech may be word salad, but the man is genuinely scared. Had one of the doctors abused him in some way? Combined with what the gold meant, David could be accusing a doctor or someone else at the hospital of planting a bomb somewhere. She doubts the addict has it in him to devise an accusation, let alone a surprisingly coherent one. But maybe it's not coherent at all, just the rantings of a disturbed mind. Pale neon lights cast eerie shadows on their faces, adding to the moment's tension. Jane's eyes narrow, her mind racing through the possibilities. She's open to the former, but bets heavily on the latter. Her thoughts keep returning to the kid's words about an explosion. She asks herself,
Is it just schizophrenic confusion?
Atlanta's hum pulses around them. Even in daylight, it serves as a constant reminder of the evil shadows lurking at every corner as they navigate the city streets. John receives a pair of pants from one of the social workers at the station. He hands the pants to David, who changes in the room and walks out.
Well, don't you look nice?
Jane remarks as she reaches the conference room, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. Thank you. David manages a half smile of his own. Jane glances at him, noticing a trickle of blood.
Your nose is bleeding.
she points out, handing him a tissue. David wipes his nose, his movements a bit clumsy. Must have hit it when I took him to the ground. A smirk highlights John's face. Jane shrugs, a spark of amusement in her eyes.
Looks like you've had quite the day, haven't you?
Her tone lightens the mood. David chuckles softly, the tension in the room easing just a bit. The hospital floor bathes in soft blue light. Sterile white tiles give a cheery but still feel. Drifting in a chemical-induced haze, David feels the crushing blow of being misunderstood. Heavy with sorrow, his eyes dart around the room, seeking a glimmer of hope. They don't believe him. His angel, Jane, returns him to the hospital, swearing he'll get the help he needs. She mentions his accusations, but omits that they involve hospital staff. To her credit, his angel checks the room he mentioned. Her brow furrows with concentration. However, she seems distracted by a dying plant in the corner, a subtle frown pulling at her lips. He notices her pick something off the floor, an eggshell white pill. His heart skips a beat, expecting her to say something about it, but she doesn't. Her face remains impassive, the moment slipping away. David clings to his belief that something bad is about to happen. The liquid gold spilling out across the land is his fear. At least, that's how he puts it. She seeks to avoid Fracasciaretti, the Zoroastrian end. If he can't stop it, maybe it is meant to be. In Zoroastrianism, he finds a semblance of hope. The world needs purification, and he feels part of that divine plan, even if no one else, his angel included, sees it. But his role is to stop it. The chemicals dull his senses, but his faith keeps a small fire burning within him. Maybe, just maybe, he can help bring about that transformation without the world ending. He's misunderstood and broken, but he's not entirely lost. His fingers twitch, the movement betraying his inner turmoil, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Lock onto Jane's, searching for a sign of belief, of understanding. Jane's expression remains guarded, her eyes a mixture of skepticism and concern. David's heart aches, but he holds on to his faith, the tiny ember of hope flickering in the dark abyss of his soul. Of course, she finds no bombs or bags. This crushes his spirit even more. David's shoulders slump, and he bows his head, hating himself for his inability to communicate with others. He wishes his implant worked better. Part of him fears he hallucinated it all, not caring if he lives or dies anymore, or what happens to the world because they refuse to listen to him. He agrees to be readmitted to the hospital for observation. The staff call his insurance company, and this time, they decide on a new 3-day stay. His angel had failed him, and he feels crushed. Before she leaves, she tells him to be good and that she will visit in a day or two. David's eyes widen with fear, worried she will only find a dead body, as he believes the staff will try to eliminate him after the attack. He cringes as he says goodbye, his voice barely a whisper. Even she cannot save him now. Jane's concerned eyes linger on him for a moment, but she turns and walks away. The door closing behind her with a finality that echoes in David's mind. His heart sinks further, and he wraps his arms around himself, trying to find some comfort in the bleak, sterile environment. The neon lights outside the window flicker, casting fleeting shadows that only deepen his sense of isolation and despair. Strolling out of the vehicle, Jane and John joke and catch up, but underlying tension pulses beneath their words. John drives the standard high-powered black and white electric car hypercar SUV appearing with all the legal AI tech. The sleek design contrasts sharply with the gritty backdrop of the city. On the side, the blue logo features 6 black, blue, and red stripes, one for each police zone. The center of the car door displays the city of Atlanta's flag in silver, gleaming under the streetlights. As they approach, the soft hum of the car's engine cuts through the night air, a reminder of the advanced technology at their disposal. Two things start in Jane's mind. The first is that she feels she missed something about David's story for some reason. The second is that she needs to find this woman, Margaret, and determine what caused the Vigilante war. Jane's mind races with the implications of their next steps. She forces herself to believe the call they made with David is correct. Still, every laugh feels forced, every smile a mask for the growing tension. She hopes Margaret can provide her answers. Sincerely, she desires some meaning to be found in the last few years of dealers and vigilantes killing each other. Understanding the origins may help lead to the war's resolution, so a healing process can begin. Every day, bodies mount. She glances at John, noting the tight set of his jaw and how his hands grip the steering wheel just a bit too hard. The neon lights reflecting off the car windows adds an otherworldly glow to their faces, heightening the sense of unease. As the car glides onto the main road, the city's haze envelops them, the undercurrents of danger and uncertainty mingling with the flickering lights. Each second feels stretched, charged with the electricity of the unknown. They're moving forward, but into what? The weight of their mission presses down on them, transforming casual conversation into a desperate attempt to keep the looming dread at bay.
Seems the department went all out on the tech for these.
They leap into the car, and REM's Losing My Religion plays from the speakers. It is well worth it. John revs the engine of his car, the tires screeching against the pavement as they speed off. The satellite hookup, flight drones, 360 cameras with facial recognition and AI. I can't tell you the number of times just being able to get a bird to peer around a corner saved my butt. Hell, the AI practically solves the crimes itself. John's voice fills with a mix of awe and tension. Jane nods, her eyes scanning the crumbling streets around them. This section needs a lot of work. Time has left it run down.
I can see that.
She tries to keep her voice steady. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I almost got killed chasing a suspect down an alley, a couple of blocks from Peachtree. Hacker used a cell to get into my car and peg. His face grows noticeably distraught.
Peg?
Jane's brow furrows in concern. He mumbles while his eyes glances away. Yeah, sort of a recent thing. Find a local self-driver. Most of the time, trucks. Well, they line the auto car to head to your location. Jane's hand reaches out, touching his arm in a comforting gesture.
That sounds horrible.
Her voice soft with empathy. John's face brightens slightly, his eyes meeting hers with a glimmer of relief. The city's neon lights flash around them, casting long shadows that dance across their faces. The weight of their conversation hangs heavy in the air, but Jane's touch offers a brief moment of solace in their otherwise harsh reality. Each moment charges with the unpredictability of what lay in waiting at Margaret's. Believe me, it is. His tone softens. He takes one hand from the wheel and runs it through his hair. Anywho, I managed to catch the truck coming in from the side on the bird.
If it hit the side, oh, it could beat the airbag.
John's eyebrows form an arch.
Shit.
Jane feels surprised at how she seems to slip back into the conversational routine she and John shared years ago, when he was her partner. For those weeks, they hunted a perp on SMI. Excitedly, John nods. I slammed the brakes and the AI jammed the truck with a pulse signal, like we used to change the traffic lights sort of thing.
Sure. Those emit high-frequency strobes.
Yep. It stopped the truck from swerving into me at high speed. Killer is, and I have no idea how it did it, The truck swerved down my street. Back didn't make it. It flipped. But the front, God, it was horrible. Pained expression crosses his face. Damn thing still hit me. Airbag popped. Saved my life. They never found the shit-ass hacker who did it. But I lived. Had a couple of breaks, though.
God, that's horrible.
Sort of. Thought I was dead for a bit. I lay there and managed to squirm enough with the steering wheel pressed into my leg to reach the thermic lance in the back.
You carry one of those?
Yeah, we're issued them in case there is an accident, and the person needs to be immediately cut out of the car. John's voice switches from excited to informative. I cut myself out of the steering wheel and the door before the emergency medical technicians got there.
Wow, that's an intense story.
Oh, they are the worst. The department covered the medical bills and the therapy. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but got the post-traumatic stress thing from the whole incident. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't nothing like that poor slob David. My family thought I was Looney Tunes and did some virtual reality exposure to help. Don't you be judging.
No judgment. You know my head was part of why I booked it out to SMI and never formally worked in the city.
Jane thinks he's sensitive to getting psych help. Probably why he came down so hard on the schizo kid. Yeah, right. But even with that and the short-term disability, I ran into some financial problems after some bad timing. My mortgage ballooned.
Fucking variable rates.
Jane has an unshakable love for John. It is not romantic love, but the type of affection that comes from working together and placing their lives in each other's hands. You betcha. Father needed some heat shock protein treatments to lessen his aging. My daughter came down with irritable bowel syndrome, and the doctor suggested a shit implant. Hell, suddenly, even the co-pays were kicking my out-of-work butt.
What did you do?
The only thing I could. I hooked up with some good old friends of mine. It's a bit crazy still, post up the Confederate flag type guys, but they seemed to get me. To their credit, some of them found some digital spirituality or nonsense.
Like astrological chart drawing software?
Yeah, but broader. The AI tossed in some Bible. It's not all crazy. I tried a few times, and it said I was destined for great things to reset mankind.
Well, it can't be wrong then.
Okay, drop the sarcasm. I might do some great things yet. They hooked me up with the side gig bartending at a local club. Nothing stressful and, of course, off the books. It was not a bad gig. We pulled through. Hey, is this the place?
You betcha.
20 minutes after leaving the hospital, Jane and John haul up next to a vast 25-story apartment complex. They enter the building and speak to the manager. He takes them to Margaret's apartment, but it turns out to be empty. The manager takes a moment to go to the bathroom to take a dump. Hauled up in the kitchen, near the exit onto the deck, the two start talking. They figure they will have to return later and stake out the place until the woman returns. As they stand in the kitchen, a neighbor passes by the door to the deck. The Roma-skinned neighbor, adorned in boho chic attire, her large circular earrings glinting and a red bandana gracing her head, steps forward with an air of ancient wisdom and the freedom of her people.
Excuse me. Who the hell are you? And why are you in Marguerite's apartment?
Sensing the unyielding spirit of her lineage, John draws out his badge and presents it respectfully. The woman speaks with the fire of the ancestors in her eyes and strength in her tone. Just the police, ma'am.
Oh.
Would you happen to know where your neighbor is? John, mindful of the delicate balance of cultural discussions, tucks his badge back into his pocket.
No. Is she in trouble?
The woman eyes them suspiciously.
No, she is fine, but we must speak to her. Did you try Life Splice? Life Splice? Yeah, it is an old punk dive bar, about 3 blocks from here.
The old woman points vaguely to where the bar is.
She loves going to that place. Thanks.
The neighbor leaves, but as she does, the woman pauses and says,
Sometimes, when souls wander apart, they evolve. And one might not recognize the changes upon reunion. Yes, that is true.
Jane responds with a nod, pondering the hidden meaning behind the woman's words, wondering if it speaks to her estrangement from her wife. She turns to John, her eyes catching the microwave, symbolizing the passage of time and change. So, we're heading to the bar, Jane? Jane, you all right?
Oh, yeah. I just zoned out. John, his nosebleed, and he had diarrhea.
Who?
David, do you remember?
John looks at her. So, what?
Radiation sickness has those as symptoms, right?
And a million other things. Jane reaches into her pocket and shows John the pills. Well, I ain't seen one of those since the Force started giving us the smart shirts.
The pill?
Yeah, it is a potassium iodide, Ki. They had them handy in case nukes went off.
I found this at the hospital.
I am sure they have hundreds of different types of meds.
It was in the room where David reported the bomb. And the plants. Did you notice the plant's leaves?
I'm not big on botany. I sorta have a black thumb. I killed everything in our garden. Hearing his voice gives Jane a sense of satisfaction. His company is more than endurable. His words are captivating.
My wife has an awesome garden. She even grows giant puffball mushrooms. She is excellent at that sort of stuff. Anyhow, I thought it odd because, given the sunlight through the window in the room, and the great temperature, the plant's stomata were closed.
So?
I was shocked. Plants do this to reserve water.
Could be 100 reasons for that. John runs his hand over the back of his head. His feet shift on the ground as he ponders the situation.
Maybe, but radiation is one of those reasons. Also, it would make sense the radiation leak from the bomb knocked out his brain's macro implant. It could be why his speech pattern with the implant appears like word salad, which is something that the implant's supposed to fix. Maybe we should head back to the hospital and check up on David.
You seriously believe a dirty bomb is in the hospital? John's eyes drift out of the window of the car. His gaze falls on an old Catholic church, its weathered facade bearing silent witness to the vigilante war that has claimed so many lives. He recalls the grime story of an old priest martyred in this sacred place while offering solace in the confessional. His killer was a vigilante, and the reasons remain unclear, even 2 years later. The old priest's blood stained the stones. The church stands as a testament to faith amidst the chaos, its stained glass windows casting a divine light that mingles with the shadows of their predicament. Maybe he does not need to understand her reason. The details are strong enough, and they will find out the rest. He would trust her gut. John sighs and pauses. Is he afraid of what he might find if he listens to Jane? How could the world get crazier than the stuff he has seen over the last few years? His face reflects frustration and contemplation as the weight of his duty presses heavily upon him. Reading his facial expression, Jane attempts to let him off the hook.
I don't believe it. And frankly, I don't know what to believe.
John sighs and pauses. He nods thoughtfully, though his eyes flicker with uncertainty. He knows the department hates it when an officer creates a public spectacle, but he trusts her gut. Worth a check, I guess. I don't want us to be chasing hallucinations, but if it is what the kid suggests, well, the minimal blowback I'll be getting for calling it in will be worth it.
Let's go.
John draws out his cell phone. Well, I'll call the department. If this thing is leaking radiation, the detectors can determine it.
What about if it has been moved?
Jane does not appear to be paying much attention to John's points. Well, sometimes the residual lasts around. I believe it would be moved by this point if it were there. We searched the room and found nothing. At the hospital, Jane, John, hospital security, and several hazmat and bomb squad individuals converge around room 95. Contrary to their preconceived notions of it being a standard patient's room, room 95 is the hospital hydroponics garden. According to the receptionist, it's where the pharmacy section cultivates medication ingredients. With the enormous modern pharmaceutical industry, creating some medicines by hand strikes Jane as a flashback to an older time in medicine. All sorts of plants with special chemicals thrive in the room, some emitting a faint, eerie glow. It's hard not to be in awe of the place, but the officers don't have time to marvel. They muddle around, speaking hushedly, as they explore the area, searching for signs. This is their chance to uncover the truth. The air is thick with tension, every rustle of leaves and whir of machinery heightening their senses. Jane's heart pounds in her chest as she scans the room, her eyes darting from one glowing plant to the next. John's jaw is set, his gaze steely as he assesses the potential dangers. While he would never say it out loud, he staunchly believes there is a good chance this turns out to be a waste of time. Hysteria inspired by a mental patient. The security team stands on edge, their hands gripping their equipment tightly. Every second feels stretched, the silence oppressive. The faint hum of the hydroponic systems mixes with the labored breathing of those present, creating an atmosphere heavy with anticipation. Jane takes a deep breath, steadying herself for whatever they might find. The weight of their mission presses down on them, the flickering lights casting ominous shadows that dance across their faces. This moment could change everything, and they know it. Jane and John don't particularly worry about radiation poisoning, but they inject a radiation sickness pill anyway. They've been in the room before, and John's shirt is designed to block some radioactive effects. Jane feels a twinge. It's not quite fear, but definitely concern. The tension is palpable, every sound amplified in the stillness. They exchange a glance, their resolve hardening as they prepare to uncover the truth lurking within room 95.
Wonder if this could give us cancer years from now.
Her voice bounced off the hospital floor's tile. John's mouth twists into a frown. God, I hope not. I got a family to get into adulthood. Jane nods. Get David. He might be helpful. John orders one of the security guards behind him.
You ready?
The two stare at the door, tension rippling through the air, several people in hazmat suits, and the bomb squad team behind them. John smiles and twists his lips, a hint of unease in his eyes. Jane and John fling themselves into the room, kicking the door open with force. The suited teams rush in right behind them. After searching and finding no one, they signal the bomb squad and hazmat. Instantly, two hazmat members rig a radiation detection device. The team member turns to Jane and John. Best if you stay outside. If there's radiation in this room, the quicker you leave, the less you ingest. They reluctantly stroll from the room, anxiety etched on their faces. David arrives in the area 5 minutes later, adding a new layer of tension to the already charged atmosphere. The room's eerie glow from the chemically enhanced plants casts unsettling shadows, heightening the sense of urgency and danger. Every second feels like a countdown to an unknown disaster. "You came back." David's shrill, trumpeting voice breaks through the tension. His eyes are wide with fear, his hand grazing over Jane's shoulder and clutching her biceps. John goes to protest, but the officer comes out of the room. He rips his mask off. "Well, we got a reading. It is not very high, but that might be because the material was removed." Surprised, Jane realizes she is not unhappy with the information. She should be, but it is more like a puzzle. And the reality is that she needs to stop this device, whatever it is. She hopes against the reality that no lives are in danger. "David, you said it was a doctor?" "Yes, Dr. Caligari." "We have no doctor by that name on staff." Jane chuckles, remembering the old film.
No, I'm sure you don't, David. No, I'm sure you don't. David, can you think? I really need you to focus. This is important.
David's eyes are wild with fear. "As important as the liquid gold?" Jane realizes it must be torture for him, with everyone always pitying or feeling bad for him. His disease is a horrible one. John glares at David. "Think, man!"
It is okay, David.
John steps back to let the woman try.
What was his name?
Bob Robinson. Danger, Will Robinson." The Lost in Space reference is not missed on John, who mumbles in the background. "We don't have a Dr. Robinson." A light of recognition appeared in the security man's eyes. "We have an orderly by that name. David, can you describe him?" "Cartoons all over his body up to his neck and mouth. Here's to you, Mrs. Robinson. Jesus holds a place for those who pray." David quotes the old Simon and Garfunkel song. His voice becomes sing-song, and he cries at the end in bitter frustration. "That is him, unless he meant a woman. The orderly is a man with tattoos."
I think he jumbled two verses together.
Exasperated, John shoots her a severe glare.
Well, he did.
"Focus, Jane."
Fickle.
She sighs. John has no sense of humor. An hour ago, he did not believe the kid. What a difference such a short period can make. "Was it just one man?" Two. Not one, but two. Me and you." "Who was the second?" David stares off. No. The sun is low. He poured the liquid gold on the floor and mopped it so." His voice quivers. His eyes dart around, wild with an intensity that deepens the mystery. He pours the imaginary liquid gold on the floor and mops it, almost reverently. Maybe a janitor, and he does know the name? These liquid gold comments confuse me, though.
He has schizophrenic speech. I think he is tying the floor cleaner to something else. His parents were Zoroastrians. I am far from an expert, but I think in Zoroastrianism, liquid gold symbolizes divine purity. Pouring it is an act of cleansing, a way to remove corruption.
Yes, my words are free. My angel holds the key. David trembles. So, it's some sort of apocalyptic thing. There are so many different cultures and religions here in Atlanta. Maybe we should call in an expert? I remember the story. It's not just about the gold. It's about the cosmic battle between good and evil, light and darkness. We need to purify, to cleanse. David's eyes fill with fervent belief and bear into Jane's. This is the clearest response she has ever seen from him since her arrival in Atlanta. The weight of his words and John's suggested meaning hangs heavy in the air. The tension is almost palpable. This is not just a person, but possibly a group, and they hold a device to kill many. Jane can feel the urgency in his silent plea, the desperate need for understanding and belief. The room seems to hold its breath, waiting for the next revelation. All leads to this second man would help. Unfortunately, David says, "The streets have no name. Jane recognizes the title of a U2 song. John glares at the homeless man in frustration, and then a wave of guilt follows over him. This man is fighting against his own disability to get out a message to them as best he can. Cruel universe. This is insane. There could be a deadly bomb, and we are trying to get information from the brain dead. We need to interview the orderly and the janitor. The security agent draws out his handheld tablet and taps a few buttons. Bob Robinson is not working. I can call him if you like. No. Give his address to me, and I'll pass it along to the chief. They can get a team to his place and pick him up. John raises his cell phone watch, and the security guy airdrops the information. John relays it to the captain with a video message and a request to get David, a sketch artist, to create a visual for the staff to remember who this janitor might have been. Then he turns back to security. Was there trash in the cans? If so, where is it now? It's been taken to the bins, I suppose. Hospitals make tons of trash. It would take days to go through, and we have no idea which bags would be relevant here.
Plants.
Jane licks her lips.
Get the bags with plant cuttings. We can go through those first.
Frustration glazes over John's eyes as the totality of the situation dawns on him. Time is the enemy. Any moment, a bomb could go off and kill people. He has no idea how many or where. He sucks in a breath. His words are slow and cautious. Look, we had a bomb here, and now it is not. They might be planning to use it tonight. Interviews and trash searches could take hours.
Not much time. How about that fancy car of yours?
What do you mean?
If we hooked up a Geiger counter to it.
Jane ponders aloud, but John cuts in. Genius! We can have the AI get us to at least the general vicinity. Jane, you're a godsend. Jane chuckles in a folksy sort of way.
I know. Let's see if we can bring David. He might be able to identify the bag he saw.
Can it be set up? John asks the hazmat person. The hazmat officer takes his hand to his chin and strokes it. I suppose so. We could track it, but you must take someone from the bomb squad to defuse it. The blue disposal truck can follow me. The best way is probably to get 3 more teams out here to follow up on the interviews and trash searches. Every bit of information on tracking these bastards is critical.
I know. Let's see if we can bring David. He might be able to identify the bag he saw.
Jane checks her revolver and places it in its holster by her side. Yeah, if there is no bomb, I might be knocked down to working as a meter maid. Still, that would be my preferred outcome, all this and nothing. The 3 dash to inform the doctors that David is leaving. They receive an overhead page from security and venture into the garbage area. A body lays sprawled out.
Dollars will get you donuts. That's the janitor.
David walks over and confirms she is correct. John speaks to one of the officers. Okay, I want an APB out for this Bob Robinson and have the computer compare his image against every CCT scan in the city. On it. Underground data centers can process that very quickly. We should have results in an hour or so. One of the officers presents them with 3 new shirts. These are not bulletproof, but they do much better in blocking radiation. The 3 go into the restrooms and change. After a hasty installation, the 3 jump into the car. The hazmat team converts the Geiger counter readings to red bars on the holographic screen. John activates the AI analysis to give them a direction, watching its suggestions closely to see if the counter picks up or drops. Go. I hope this works.
You know what might help? If they can install the Geiger counter into the drone as well. We could run it maybe 100 feet in front of the car and sway it, which would provide more data for the computer to digest.
Well, look at you, all tech-savvy. Since going to SMI? Got to say, Jane, never dull when you arrive. Inside, I know it is crazy, but I am hoping this is a broken microwave or something. But the body would suggest otherwise. John jokes, then turns to the team. Can you do what Officer Upro suggests?" They nod and get to work immediately. John holds his breath, the tension thick in the air. Each passing second feels like an eternity. Every moment a potential for explosive detonation and hazardous material spreading everywhere. The holographic screen flickers with data, and the hum of the drone overhead adds to the sense of urgency. Jane's fingers tap nervously on the dashboard, her eyes fixed on the screen, praying for a sign of safety. John's jaw tightens, every muscle in his body coiled with anticipation. John taps the controls, kicking on 7 seconds. Walk together, rock together with his left hand. He keeps it low so they can still hear the ticks of the Geiger counter, and the red bars on the screen are their true focus. The machine learning program in the AI interprets the readings, adding layers of tension to the situation. With the bomb and hazmat teams trailing behind, they sail down the dizzying neon streets, the city's glow casting eerie reflections on their faces. Jane's eyes dart between the road and the holographic display, her brow furrowed with anxiety. Her fingers tap nervously on the dashboard, the rhythm betraying her tension. John's grip tightens on the wheel, his jaw clenched, the strain visible on his face as he navigates through the labyrinthine streets. Every shadow, every flicker of light adds to the charged atmosphere. The car's electric hum melds with the punk rock beats, creating a dissonant symphony that underscores her urgency. Jane glances at John, her eyes filled with determination and fear. She bites her lip, trying to steady her breath, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on her shoulders. The neon lights flash around them, casting long shadows that dance across their faces. The sense of impending danger looms over them like a dark cloud, each second stretched thin by the relentless ticking of the Geiger counter. Atlanta's pulse, chaotic blend of light and sound, mirrors the turmoil within them as they race against time to uncover the bomb. 20 minutes pass, and the driving is worse than navigating a flooded highway in torrential rain. The scanning and interpreting process is tedious, lagging, where it never has before. The AI struggles to keep up. David sits in the back of the car, mumbling to the voices in his head. Noodles, noodles. He stares out the window at an old noodle truck. John's voice is weak and strains. After this, pal, I'll take you for ramen noodles. No, I want donuts. Donuts? Is that like a cop joke? John glances at Jane with a smirk. Jane's eyes meet his, a flicker of amusement momentarily breaking through her tension. The city's lights blur past. The car's engine, a low hum against the backdrop of David's ramblings, and the ticking Geiger counter. No, Boston cream, my theme. Is he shitting me? John glances over to Jane.
I think he wants Boston cream donuts.
Jane switches the song, playing to play The Damned's Life Goes On, and sings the lyrics. John shakes his head. John's cell phone watch rings. The tune is REM's Shiny Happy People. Jane, can you take a look at this? He reaches his arm over for her to see. She nods and glances over. I just got a bunch of text messages. Might be important.
Sure. They got an update on a few things. First, they identified the body of the janitor. He seems to have been using Kevin Hill's fake name for the job. But his real name was Angus Jones.
Angus Jones? John licks his lips.
Yeah. He has sometimes gone to white supremacist groups, including one called Return of the South. You'll like this part. They are kind of a digital spiritualist group.
Wow, really? Crazy shit. I guess they like their astrological charts mixed with some Bible, too. Lightning flashes in the sky. Looks like we might get some rain soon. Nodding, Jane adds.
Hand of God. You know.
Her voice was soft and shallow. A minute passes, and she adds,
Also, the next text says they found a bunch of shredded papers in a bag with some clip-ins. Scan them and have a computer program trying to reform the documents. They found a matchbook to a bar. The Southern Crow's Nest.
John, off guard, asks her to repeat the bar's name. She does, and pain flickers across his face, vanishing into determination. Anything else?
I was just getting to that. Not much more. They hit a judge and secured a warrant to the orderly's phone records. Credit card statements, digital dollar movements, etc. If he did it with money, we should know within the hour.
Hopefully it clears things up. Did the drone just stop?
Yeah, it looks like it switched to hover. This must be the area. Hey, what happened to our backup?
I guess they fell behind, but we were moving slower than molasses, so God only knows how that happened. The car rolls up, screeching to a halt. John kills the engine as Jane downs a second anti-radiation pill. She hands the bottle to John, who swallows one too. Shadows stretch and twist in the dim light as the two exchange determined looks. Heroes by the end of this, or ghosts at ground zero. Jane's hands tremble, her giggle hanging like a distant echo. The grass and gravel area feels menacingly open. Overgrowth covers places that used to be concrete, now cracked rubble. A soft wind rustles the tree leaves while neon billboards crackle and hum ominously, their electric glow casting eerie shadows. Beyond them, to the right, a mega bridge looms, its steel tendrils glowing with bioluminescent graffiti. Jane wonders if jumping on it would whisk her back to her wife and safety. A giant billboard seeps golden neon, bouncing off a chrome reflector into the area. Jane raises her cybernetically enhanced hand to see past the glare. Overhead, a drone hovers menacingly, its red eye scanning the scene. 25 paces ahead, power cables snake into a transformer box, pulsating with energy. A half block west, the poorer section of the city looms with rundown hotels from the last century, now outfitted with patchwork neon lights and holographic ads. John wipes sweat from his brow, the glow of his augmented eyes reflecting the tension. The three step out of the police car, the hum of its electric engine dying down. REM's Everybody Hurts plays, its haunting melody coming from John's phone, a relic from the pre-cyber era. Tensions coil like a serpent in the neon-drenched light. Impossible to see the stars from all the light pollution.
Damn. You really like REM, dude.
Lightning flashes again in the sky, and a steady downpour fell. I do. He coughs briefly into his hand and clears his nose. They are from Athens, you know? Jane nods. Her eyes study John's face. Another round of ringing comes from John's watch phone. Hang on. I gotta take a call. Do me a favor and hit the button to call the bird overhead.
Sure.
John raises his watch phone and answers. Hello? Tapping the button near the steering wheel, Jane calls the satellite to get pictures as John asked. He steps off behind the car toward the neon billboard. A few minutes pass, and John's voice becomes a shout. At one point, it sounds as if he's crying. Jane fears the worst. Has the bomb gone off? It's difficult to see John between the rain and the billboard lights. Waiting, Jane's short hair flattens from the downpour. Oil leaks out and stings her eyes. Hands trembling and muttering to himself, David stands wandering near the car, drenched. Water drips from his nose and lips as he paces anxiously. The golden light reflecting off the chrome blocks his view of John. He feels an urge to move toward the light. This is his moment, his chance for redemption, to have his sins burned away.
John, what are you doing?
Tears and rain mix on John's face as he moves back to the group. Jane's breath quickens as John's hand inches toward his gun. Is he planning to kill himself? Is he planning to kill all of them? Why?
John, what are you doing?
Jane floods with confusion. Maybe she is misinterpreting the situation. Maybe nothing is going on, but that doesn't square with his facial expressions. Her voice is soft. As she hopes to talk him down, he grinds his teeth as if in pain.
Where the hell is their backup?
Jane wonders. Her chest tightens. Her hand slides for her gun. John sighs, his hand on his gun. If you were in my position, you'd understand. His words wound her, and his actions make no sense. The worst is that he has the jump on her. His hand draws his gun. He fires. David lunges and blocks the bullet, which appears more like a ball of glowing gold. Light blood spurts from his chest. God, it burns! David screams. Jane's shot is just a millisecond behind John's, and the bullet strikes John square in the stomach, and he drops his gun. A second shot hits him in the shoulder, and he spins. Jane's face ruffles in despair. She screams.
Why?
Inexpressible angst crosses John's face. Agony wells up in him. He cries and coughs. Then he grunts. The bar was my friend's. Madness is a burden, one which he has adopted. Jane thinks of the Roma woman's words about wandering apart. If you died here, the bomb would go off, and then there would be no way to trace it to them. My wife and kids. John utters with his last breath. His eyes plead with her, and she knows he wants her to lie to save his pension. Did he really expect her to cover up radiation deaths to save his family? Or does he expect her to let the bomb go off?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Jane rushes over to John's side.
Tell me where the bomb is.
John's blood covers her clothing. She reaches down to caress his cheek, hoping if he is conscious he might awake and tell her what is going on. Jane's companion is dead as a doornail. His skin is cold and pale. Seeing David on the floor, Jane rushes to him. His skin was ashen.
Where the hell is the bomb?
She thinks aloud.
Should have stayed home? This is nuts. Where are the guys to disarm the bomb?
Her eyes scan the area and catch sight of the metal power transformer.
Could the bomb be in there?
She rushes to the box. It is locked. Remembering what John said about the thermal lance, she returns to the car. It indeed sits under the back seat. She grabs it and headed to the box, cutting the door open. A bag is inside, and she hauls it out as the bomb team draws up.
Finally!
Rain mixed with sweat and tears pours down her face.
I found it, guys. I got no idea how to disarm something like this. Can you help?
The team rushes through the rain and worked on the bomb. She goes back to the bodies. One of the police officers joins her. What happened here? Jane thinks quickly.
Radiation sickness.
Exhaustion floods through her. Her hair mats in the front, and dirt mixes into her locks. This is one long day, and not even her case.
I think it made John crazy. He was very ill. Be careful. I think the bomb is leaky. I need to change my clothes.
The officer nods. The hot white arc light from a red and white eVTOL briefly blinds her eyes. It hovers in and lands to retrieve the bodies. Jane was taken to her hotel room. She never rode in this cross between a car and a helicopter before, but her mood is too foul from the shooting to enjoy it. A squad car shows up at her hotel room to take her to the station to debrief. The debriefing drags on for 2 hours. Satellite images reveal John fired first, clearing Jane of wrongdoing. Though there's no sound, the shooting hurts her anew with each replay. How could it have gone so wrong? John had always seemed such a good guy. Jane sips bitter coffee and nibbles on a Boston eclair, longing for a Boston cream donut they don't have. She says nothing about John, hoping his records died with him. She suspects they blackmailed him into trying to kill her. They might have succeeded if the bomb team hadn't defused it with less than a minute to spare. John knew the good old boys. It is discovered in Mr. Robinson's payment records. The police tell Jane they are heading to round them up. They ask Jane if she wants to come along, but she declines. Rising from her chair, Jane leaves the briefing room and wants to go. A woman waits in the lobby, her face growing redder with anger each time Jane takes a step. That's the widow. Jane sighed, knowing she has to say something to express her sorrow. This isn't going to be easy.
Miss Bright, my deepest condolences to you and your kids. He was a very good man, and...
Jane is interrupted with a smack across her face. Even though the action shocks her, deep down, she understands why it happens. Her cheek swells, and the pain stings. Jane's hand hovers above her face as she stumbles backward. The receptionist makes his way over to the officer.
How about you go break up some other cops' families while you're at it, bitch?
Mrs. Bright wails bitterly. Several police come to comfort the widow and lead her off. An officer moves closer to stop a second slap and says to Jane, "Damn, she walloped you. The side of your face is red."
It's what I deserve.
Jane sighs, tears welling in her eyes.
Can't heal her from her pain. If I inflicted it, I suppose. I keep going over it in my head with John. Wish I could have done something different.
She sighs. Her cheek still stings, and she worries it would blacken. Jane ducks into the bathroom, washes her face, cries, takes a deep breath to steady her tone, and calls her wife.
Hi, babe. I just wanted to let you know I am sorry. No, I'm not dying or anything. I guess I miss you. Oh, so you started taking the taurine. Good. Hey, when I get home, I'll make us some popcorn and get a little wine, and we can watch the back issues of that old show you love. Yeah, Jerry Springer. That's the one.
At this point, Jane is ready to quit. The whole situation is too much nonsense for her to handle. What the hell is going on in the world? She feels the day has gone to hell. But even she has to admit it came back since the bomb didn't go off. It's not even something she can laugh off like she used to. Everything is too grim now. Jane wanders into the pub, seeking solace in its familiar darkness. The bar is as busy as it can get tonight. Every bar stool is taken. 2 parties of 4 crowd around the large billiard tables, and every eye is glued to the large flat-screen television hanging above the bar. Every mouth screaming as some kid from a basketball team she's never heard of scores a basket. Jane wanders deeper in, her eyes scanning for the person who might hold the answers she seeks. 3 women sit in a bustling booth, all talking to each other. The one furthest to the right stands out from her blonde friends. One guzzles her beer like she needs an intervention, and the other sips a finer bioluminescent drink that Jane can't quite identify. Instead, her focus is on the rightmost woman's profile. It seems familiar. Jane slides out her reference photo. This is Margaret Labov. The bionic arm confirms it. All preconceived notions aside, the atmosphere pulses with the throb of raw punk sound and the glow of neon tattoos. The Atlanta punk scene is very different from the small one on SMI. Miles from home, Jane's heart races as she prepares for the confrontation. The chaos of her day, combined with not knowing this group, amplifies the tension. She has no real authority here, no jurisdiction. From the speakers, the air fills with rebellious energy, fueling the moment's intensity. Would the bounty hunter even speak with Jane?
Marguerite?
Jane questions. Margaret turns around with a,
Are you Marguerite LeBove? Ma'am.
The woman appears ready to say something but is interrupted by another woman at the table slurping her beer.
Oh, please. Color that bitch.
The three women laugh, and Jane sighs. Hopefully, this would be the last they get in her way.
Listen, I don't have time for this. I know you don't know me. And indeed, I am deeply sorry to interrupt. But I just want to know what you know about the vigilante attacks plaguing this city. And who's asking?
Margaret slurs, furrowing her eyebrows.
I ain't just giving away any information to some rando who happens into a bar. Better be something in it for me.
The four lock eyes and stared. All will be concluded in To Hell and Back. Thank you for listening to The Atlanta Vigilante War, Case 009, Gardens, Street Life, Dirty Bombs, and Saying Sorry. Script by Joseph and Marisha Cautilli. Based on a short story novella by Joseph Cautilli, Marisha Cautilli, and Peter Kim. Director and producer, Roma Gray. Executive producer credits, Marisha and Joseph Cautilli. Narrated by Joshua Banks and Shauna Lee Carton.